Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first day's early session of the World Economic Forum. The topic of today's session is how China shapes the future of finance. You're quite interested in the future of China's financial industry, so welcome you all to the session. The session is developed by WEF organization team and also the first financial magazine. The Chinese banking sector is twice of that of the US, and the capital market is stimulated by reform. And the top 4 big banks are from China. After the financial crisis, China has become the most powerful power in this industry, and the capital market is at top 3. Some said top 2, so huge scale. And the commodities market actually in 2018 took 53% of the global scale. So looking at these 3 largest industries, China is pretty huge. And as all know, in the past few years, China's fintech developed drastically. And the financial industry uses a lot of fintech. So with this scale and scope, we're still making efforts. For example, financing is pretty difficult now and it's very costly. The banking market and the bond and securities market are not providing enough support to the concrete economy. Meanwhile, the interest rate marketization hasn't been completed. The depth and the market level of the financial industry are not enough. And the global market is seeing the trade friction. So there are huge challenges for the financial industry as well. So against this background, we are discussing the future of the financial market in China. There are 2 motives behind. First motive is the supply side reform in China, which includes the open up of the financial market or integrating into the global financial industry. So these 2 motives are shaping the future of the financial market in China. And so today we're here to discuss how China shapes the future of finance. We have a powerful panel today. To my left is Mr. Zhengqiang, chairman from Dalian Commodity Exchange. Dalian Commodity Exchange is a very important commodity exchange in China. Thank you very much, Chairman Li. Thank you and welcome. To his left is an old friend of ours, Mr. Zhu Ming. He's the chairman of the National Institute of Financial Research, and you're quite familiar with his career path. He's a leader in the finance industry. And to his left is Mr. Yang Metzger. He has a very good Chinese name called Jianmei Zide. He's the head of banking, capital markets, and advisory, Asia Pacific Citi. Thank you very much for your presence. To his left is Ms. Zhang Lu. He's the founding and managing partner of Fusion Fund. She is a young and dynamic leader in the financial market. Last but not least, from the representative from the top 4 big banks in China, China Construction Bank. And he's the executive vice president, Mr. Huang from CCB. With this powerful panelists and this very important session title, we shall now start the discussion. We're faced with many challenges. We haven't finished our own reform, and we're impacted by the externalities. The US-China trade friction is one of the externalities we're facing now. The Osaka G20 are giving us good news. Leaders from China and the US met with each other, and it seems the environment has been improved. And the terrorism has suspended, and the US side's action against Huawei has suspended as well. So, Mr. Zhu, I'll start from you. The two state leaders expressed a willingness to continue with the negotiation. Is great for the stabilization of the financial market. The trade war is all about trade. But now the information has been disseminated greatly. So the trade war is impacting not just trade. The U.S. automobile stock prices drop a lot right after the announcement of the tariffs increase. The U.S. companies, they relied on the Chinese companies to do import and export. These companies' stock prices dropped as well. So the financial market is quite sensitive to all these changes. The two state leaders expressed their willingness to continue with the negotiation and to strike a deal in the end. And that's a piece of good news then for the world as total. And it will help the stabilization of the financial market. So this is a piece of good news. But now let's look at the micro economy in the world and the financial policies. And they are impacted by the U.S.-China relations. Last year, the Fed said, the Federal Reserve said they would have interest hikes. But when the U.S. and China trade friction has become more and more severe, there has been a direction change estimate. If the Federal Reserve go back to do the interest hike, then how shall we have a future outlook? The U.S.-China trade, if continues to worsen, it will impact the world economy dramatically, and it will bring down the world economy increase by 0.5%, a big number, and damage the supply chain globally. Last year, the direct investment dropped from 1.8 trillion to 1.28 trillion, and because nobody knew where to do the investment after the trade war. So that damaged the economy growth. Very negative impact from the trade war. If the trade war can come to a stop, it will stabilize the financial market. It will give confidence to the supply chain and the world economy based on these interest hikes or decrease. I believe the interest decrease pace will slow down, and that is worth noting. Interest hikes to interest deductions, all these fluctuations are having doubts on the credibility of the Federal Reserve. If the monetary policies of the Federal Reserve can come back to a good framework, then that would be a stabilizer for us. Thank you very much. Yang.
Have business in China and also in the rest of the world. So how do you assess the trade tension between China and United States will affect the global value chain and global financial markets and also your business in China maybe?
Sure, fantastic. Look, we are rightly or wrongly eternal optimists, so we hope that a good solution will be found. I think the one thing, speaking as somebody working in the finance industry with an operation that spans 160 countries, the trade tensions, rightly or wrongly, are making the world much more complex. In a much more complex world, clients need much more advice and help in terms of recalibrating their supply chains over time. So in that sense, actually, the finance industry plays a very important role in terms of advising on where to raise capital, where to put factories, how to move supply chains around, and is actually an important part of a solution here.
Yeah, thank you. We'll come back to that if we have enough time. 我们回到这个李总。
Can I go back to Mr. Li? As we know, in the commodities and derivatives market globally, like soybean is a very important commodity in the commodities market, and soybean is playing a core role in the U.S.-China trade friction. So would you please analyze the derivatives market's impact during the trade war? What is the impact taken by the Chinese market, and what is the role played by the derivatives market in China? Thank you. Talking about the derivatives market's role played in the U.S.-China trade friction. This is a topic that we've been focusing on. Let me firstly introduce the derivatives market to you. During the high-quality economy development, the micro companies, they have economies, meaning the companies, they have risk management capacity in-house. A credit market or capital market, stock market are making efforts to address this issue of difficulty in financing. When companies have enough funding, what is the utilization efficiency? So they need somebody to provide such services for risk control, and that is forward, the futures, and all that there is in the derivatives market. The Chinese derivatives market started from 1988, so 30 years have gone past from the early stage exploration to the current stage development model and policy arrangements of Chinese characteristics. In the past 20 years, we only had commodities without options. We only have in-counter without out-of-counter, and only within China, not abroad. But ever since last year end, we're diversified. We have both out-of-the-counter and inside the counter within China and overseas. And we also have better capacity in pricing for coherence of the prices are improved as well. And they have becoming the basis for the pricing of different commodities. Like the soybean meal, is soybean industry impacted by the U.S.-China trade friction? Because our tariff to U.S. is focused on the agricultural commodities. The spot commodity, for spot commodity during the U.S.-China trade war, soybean is the first one that has taken the impact. And then the feedstock. And China also had tariffs against the U.S. And during the Tom Sweeping Day, China announced a 25% more tariff would be added. And then the soybean meal price for future commodities increase. And then back to normal. The soybean meal price was at 0.4% something. About your question about the derivatives market's role in the U.S.-China trade friction, the futures market trading amount increased. Last year, the soybean meals transaction increased by 48% compared with the same period of last year, the previous year.
在这个价格波动时间呢，在参与我们期货市场交易。第二个的话，我们总体市场反响还是比较理性的，就是咱们的价格没有出现。
And also we didn't see this sudden volatility of this market until recent days. Thirdly, I want to stress the big producers, traders, and processors in Chinese market like Zhengqiang, Jiushan groups. You know, they moved around a large volume of goods, around, and they bought a lot of soybeans from South America, and this way, because many of these imported soybeans are used for processing the oil seeds. So that way, they identified another source of supply elsewhere, and and stabilize this volatility and increase the margin. So for this oilseed industry in China, we address this negative impact stemming from the trade conflicts. So it's fair to say that our derivative market is providing real service to this real economy in China. That's good news for us. So it is true that we are experiencing a lot of impact from this trade disputes. Because of this derivative market and because of the mechanisms, we have successfully managed to resist such effects, and we have managed the volatility. I'm very happy to hear such stories. So we are talking about this technology under this context. Zhang Lu, you are representative from this sector. So in this context, of course, you see all of us witnessing the important role played by Huawei. And they have to struggle in this very unfair environment. And also, we hear the president of the United States saying that, still these U.S. companies can sell products to Chinese companies. But still, in many ways, it is being blocked. I mean, Huawei company is being blocked in many ways. So what do you think, this impact that is producing on Huawei, especially from these different kind of barriers? Well, that's a hot topic for us. Sino-U.S. trade wars, what kind of message we're getting. In the past 5 years, actually we are witnessing globalized context and environment and global supply chain. But it is true, Huawei is being impacted, and of course, many companies now worried because of the trade wars, and they would like to diversify the different sorts of technologies. And also they're worried that there might be kind of segmentations of the world market, U.S. system or U.S. standard, Chinese standard. And also many companies, because of this worry, would like to invest more on their own products just to be prepared for these kind of worst eventualities. But we do hope that we would invest more in the same directions, to be more efficient. But now it is a big challenge, given this conflict between these two countries. From the investor's perspective, how to evaluate the future directions. And we have different perspectives, compared with 5 years ago, because we're not sure whether a particular company is going to be a global leader in this kind of context. Also, we have another worry. That is, beginning of this year, I went to Washington because, we had a lot of talk about restrictions, these tech wars, and I talked to our clients from the Silicon Valley perspective. It is they want to get out a strong message, and that we will get over this trade war. Of course, we talk a lot about this AI wars. If that kind of trade war continues, then it's going to, lead to worse situations in this competition for talents and technology wars. If that kind of wars continue, then the whole process of technology advancement will be slowed down. So we do hope that this situation will ease, especially in the perspective of the perceptions, a clear message will be sent out. Mr. Zhu, well, for President Trump's remark about continue to supply Huawei with products, I think he has no other choice. I don't think it's kind of kind message to China, because the science technology sector is the most globalized sector among all the industries that cannot be separated or stopped. So, this kind of trade war, first of all, impacted USA as a top open science technology market, which is a huge harm to U.S. science technology sector. And secondly, we have 470 billion chip markets and 300 billion for imports to China. So if you do not give this market and export product to China, then who else could take up this market? So I don't think this kind of chain could be separated. So, they're suffering a lot from this trade war. So I don't think the U.S. president has other choices. Of course, even he made such remarks, and I don't think, it's going to be a very smooth journey ever since. So we should be ready for more twists and turns. Of course, it's also a challenge for the Chinese science technology. If China is blocked in this upstream of chips and you cannot sell your products, then of course you will be impacted a lot, tremendously. So from that perspective, to build our own competency and to develop our own core technology and processes, that is essential. At the same time, just coming back to what you said, standard remains unchanged. That is essential. I don't think, we are going to have different standards or different markets. We should always have one standard and ITU. So if we have one global standard, that is one of the motivation for global competition. For one handset with 1,000, patent, then, whoever that is leading the standard will be in the leading position. And those who in leading position would be able to achieve breakthroughs. That's why we should continue innovation and to continue this science technology advancement. That is the future for the Chinese science sector. So as you said, we're realizing this standard by competition. So, even the market is segmented, but still, if you're very competitive in the field of standards, then you will be leading the world. 15 years ago, perhaps you're too young, you were not born yet at that time. I was in Tokyo. We have to change to Japanese mode. Japan has its own standard, which is not international standard. But do we have a Japanese standard? Do we have a Japanese handset? Well, now. But Japan said they want to have this international convergence, so there's no longer Japanese standards. Let me add a few things. Since 70s, 80s of last century, Japan, US, they turned many of their expertise into patents and to protect their IPR. And they, by their patent, to turn their sector into a very strong industry. And that is true for the financial industry. So, USA developed their industry this way. And also this kind of industry chain tied up with money chains. So it looks that we're fighting a trade war, but they try to change our supply chain or industry chain. That is the sense of this war. And also, it's going to have a lot of impact on the money systems, monetary systems. So that's why, RMB should be internationalized and play a more important role in this international monetary system. So, we have this kind of LIRA, new money. But before that, let's talk about this financial sector in China. CCB, as one of the most important commercial banks in China, and has identified fintech in a very important position. So could you share with us why fintech has become a very important strategy for CCB and how in the future Chinese banks should move in the future? Well, informatization of the financial sector has started from the 90s of the last century, and we all witnessed this process, and we participate in this process. SWIFT was born because of the telegraph, and also this, mobile payment by the handset. All this, contribute to the transactions of the market and make the transaction much more efficient. And also we have the internet finance, which came about a few years ago, and that has changed the ecosystem of financial sectors. So internet concept has become a very important logic for the banks, and also the blockchain and cloud computing, big data. It's an even bigger challenge for LIRA. Once successful, it's no longer, it's more than a challenge. It's going to be a disruption for us. For CCB, 5 years ago, we established a centralized system. We got a new generation system, which is very powerful. We do this inclusive finance. We spend a lot of time, but without much success for many reasons. Because as a big bank, we focus a lot on big deals, not small deals. We are very comfortable by concentrating on big deals. And also, we have limited resources, which means once we done big deals, we do not have any other resources for small deals. So it is true, the small deals, small volumes, they are costly, and it's not profitable enough to cover the risk. That's why we're not successful with small businesses. But once we have this new generation system put in place, then we identified 20,000 SME customers that we could issue loans directly. It only take, say, 3 minutes or up to 3 days, sometimes, with collateral, sometimes without. And we started this business, and they get this loan from us quickly. Of course, the other business is more than just a lending business.
So now we have this system, and it has become so powerful, most advanced maybe. But it's never the best. It's always the better in our times, as you know. So based on the system, how do we actually have this empowerment from fintech to our industry? And how to make sure we have a good transformation in CCB. So fintech is the most important strategy in CCB. In my understanding, with this next generation, new generation system is quite powerful. It can empower not only CCB, but also other small FIs. So in this sense, CCB is like an enabler of fintech. If you're playing this role, let me ask you a question. In a new generation system, can you actually realize agile innovation? Because for big companies, they're quite stubborn and they are slow to innovation. So CCB is a big bank. Can you realize so-called agile innovation in the system? Let me respond this way. The two questions are being discussed quite often in recent years. The traditional banks, businesses, in the current stage of fintech, will the traditional banking business be replaced by fintechs? The non-banking businesses, the non-financial businesses, the borderlines are becoming vague. So I would like to add more. So they are two bankers. Fintech are entering the banking industry. Will they replace the banks? Will they do all the things that we do in the traditional banks? So these are the two questions people ask. Now it's possible, I would say. I do think it's possible as well. The big banks do technology. Can they realize agile innovation? They need to have two resources. The institutionalization, the institution is too huge. The reaction is slow. In your institution, can your technology be the most advanced? Those are the doubts. I'm researching on fintech and the loan granted to small and medium-sized enterprises. I've been doing research and investigation in CCB. I look at their past 18 months of experiences. Quite interesting. Let me give you an example. 2 years ago, CCB did offline small loans of 20 billion. And now they use the AI system. Within CCB, different functions are linked to support the system. And then they issue 270 billion of loans to small and medium size. And the bad loan ratio, NPA ratio decreased to 1%. So CCB is a small loan. Maybe we should let Mr. Wang to talk about CCB. Has passed the previous records. If this model can be successful, and that is revolutionary to the future banking industry in China, big FIs combined with fintech to support the real economy entirely, that is revolutionary. Mr. Huang, I would like to mention 2 points. The fintech system. We've actually changed our financial technology fintech system. With all the IT structure are independent now from CCB, located in Shanghai. And we've got approval from the regulator. The regulator can either approve or not approve. But CBIRC did not approve such action at the very beginning. And then I found an excuse or reason to say to them, fintech is like a transformation strategy of CCB. So we should have such a framework, an independent framework for them. We separate them. And then the IT staff there could enjoy a different set of compensation. CCB's compensation back then was not attractive. And then this IT structure is independent. The compensation systems changed because you have a compensation ceiling in the banking system, but the IT company does not have the compensation ceiling. So this is a way to cut down the big institution burden. And then our IT staff is being independent, they would know what's requested by the market and what are the most recent technologies in the market to cut the bureaucracies as well. So IT staff must face the market. They must understand the market, find their spot in the market. And after the independence of the IT structure or IT company, and they've launched a housing system, like housing monitor and this and that system. All these functions are embedded in the system. And then we launch a housing strategy. So the fintech platform is the basis for all strategies in CCB. We'll go back to you.
So invest heavily on the technology and fintech. So in your view, what is the role of the technology for the growth and the expansion of the banking sector down the road?
Actually, one thing I would like to just start with and add to this debate is the fintech sector actually also represents a tremendous client opportunity for large banks. And we serve a very important role actually in enabling them. So if you just look at Citigroup for a second, we took 12 different Chinese fintech companies to the international markets to help raise money for them. That is fantastic for their innovation. It's also good business for us in terms of managing those IPOs. We were very honored to be allowed to assist Ant Financial in raising $12 billion in a private placement. This is the largest private placement that was ever done in the world, done by a Chinese company. Again, there is a role for major institutional banks to play a role in that. The other thing that is interesting is there is an opportunity for large institutions like CCB or Citigroup to serve as a backbone and the plumbing to many of these firms. We have many fintechs that plug into one bank, hopefully Citibank, and from there connect to 900 other banks or 900 forms of exchanges, currency exchange, etc. So you can be a leverage point, and that is a dynamic ecosystem where both can benefit. And one final point, I guess, on the technology part of that is many fintechs are in particular innovating very close to the client, doing certain kinds of loans, etc. A very important point that the larger banks are then also playing is securitizing some of the things that got originated and then helping distribute that. So in that sense, I think the fintechs are also a tremendous positive opportunity for large financial institutions.
If you listen closely to the models introduced by them, entirely different. Citi's model is like a main branch. Then countless fintech plug in to provide products and services, majorly about the client acquisition and client services. So the main branch is there. Others plug in this branch. For CCB, they do internal transformations, and they're actually reinventing their bank with more system and have more challenges. It's an internal process in CCB. For CITIC, it's the external development and marketization. The future big banks will have a different model of transformation. Which model will win, we're not sure, but they're competing with each other, and that's interesting. 5 years later, we should come back, or 10 years, we will re-examine. They all have their rationales to select different models. Citi had good systems and have good banks, and CITIC invested heavily to build up this new system, hoping a new model could be tried out in the system. So we should wait to see which model can win ultimately. And that was about the technology investment in the financial industry in China, and that is a motive for the development. Another great thing in the financial market is the opening up.
For the Chinese financial markets opening up, so what kind of opportunity do you see Yang as they is opening up in China's financial markets? What kind of the opportunities for you down the road, and how do you look at the future expansion in China? Because until now, you are small, very small market share in the China's market. Do you see a much bigger share here?
Okay. So we as a bank have been in China since 1902 continuously. And we are very proud of this and happy of this. And we hope to be here another 200 years. So we are very pleased.
Are you going to give everyone here a free Citi credit card?
Oh, unfortunately, I'm running corporate banking. We need to go ask our consumer banking. But you are all very welcome to apply. We would be very happy and honored. I think China is the second largest economy in the world. Without a doubt, it will become the largest economy in the world. You have had a tremendous savings rate as a nation, which means there are huge amounts of assets. The estimates vary widely, but there may be as many as $21 trillion in assets in China that are not fully invested. This represents an opportunity for the people having saved in China, for financial intermediaries to help find places to invest this money and to facilitate the ecosystem. So being allowed to be a part of that development is a great honor for us, and we see tremendous opportunities in that.
Yeah, thank you. 我们讲到中国的这
So opening up the financial market in China, we cannot ignore the commodities market. For example, iron ore. Iron ore is the earliest opened commodity to the world. You've promoted this process. What was the challenge for you? And then what is the impact to the RMB's internationalization? So that's about commodity futures market open up. Iron ore was the first. However, crude oil. Crude oil was actually the first. Iron ore was actually a very mature contract after trial run for 4 years. We brought in overseas trader, and PTA from Zhengqiang was open to the world as well. So now in our commodities market, we're both domestic and overseas. Several things to share with you. For commodities opening up, it's the need for the internal connection between commodities and the economy. In 2017-2018, we've bought more than 1 billion tons of iron ore from overseas. So certainly, we should provide a risk management tool for overseas because we're RMB priced. Since it's RMB priced, all the overseas commodities are all RMB priced. Our SDR basket, 10.92% is given to RMB. Actually, in the international trade, in the settlement and savings, RMB is less than 2%. So the RMB's international position connects to is not suitable to our economy's power in the world. So we hope when our economies become more and more open, the overseas trader the domestic market can come up with good commodity prices with RMB nominated.
So the pricing of this derivative is going to be one of the bases for international pricing. Once that is done, the international dealers, could use that and negotiate with these international buyers. So in that way, RMB is internationalized. Thank you very much. So for spelling out the role of RMB. So Mr. Zhu has been a very strong pusher for that endeavor. So time is running out. We have only 10 minutes, so we would go to next topics, which is closely linked to the internationalization of RMB, that is LIRA. Facebook raised this concept. By 2020, it's going to issue LIRA, which is producing a lot of impact globally. Zhang Lu, you are a technology investor and you work in Silicon Valley. What do you think of this initiative by Facebook? It is true. We all talk about liberal in the past few months. Blockchain, community, a whole community is talking a lot about this. But first of all, let's analyze what is the nature of this liberal. They said it's encrypted currency. But if you take a close look at the white book, it's quite different from this. You have this collateral pledge, and also it's aiming at this cross-border payment. To provide the people that are not being included in the traditional banking system. So it's not anchor money. It's not. It's not a kind of equivalent of Alipay. So it's a new type of payment method. So they've been planning this for years. From the Messenger, WhatsApp, it has a very stable client basis. So has been its aspiration, to be a payment company or to produce payment product. So, and they're putting in place the infrastructures for them to do that. That's why once they came out with these announcements, of course, there's a lot of talk how to make it secure, how to monitor, supervise this one. And we have to reposition these blockchain. But based on the current architecture, there's big clients, big organizations. It's going to be nodes. It's not just a decentralization idea, traditionally embedded in blockchain. Well, how to interpret this blockchain technology, whether we should regard it as a tool or just an investment area. It's not an investment area. And also another thing which is essential for the banking sector, that is to use technology to make industry more efficient. Otherwise, we have to invest so many things, so much resources in building underlying infrastructure. But now we don't have to do that, and it's going to be more efficient without having investment in this underlying architecture. But the central banks in a Western economy, they're quite suspicious, and they're having some pilot projects, and the many areas for improvement. So they're still exploring this model. But once successful for the banking sector, it's a big news. It's a good news for us. I don't think it's going to be the central bank of the world. I don't think Facebook has the capacity, but it's going to boost the development in this area. It's going to see a creation of a new form of banking in the world. Okay, let me ask another technical question. It's going to be a payment system, as you define LIRA. DCEP. So these are two things combined, which is best reflected in this liberal case. So Alipay, you mentioned. Of course, if the future LIRA is going to be a future Alipay, who is going to be more powerful? Because LIRA has this smart contract, while Alipay does not have. Well, from the underlying blockchain technology, still many, weak areas, volume issues, transaction issues. And from that perspective, with a smart contract, LIRA is going to be more mature. But once we solve this underlying problem, then liberal is going to be even more advantageous position. Mr. Zhu, no, I don't quite agree. I know I'm going to run the risk in opposing the view of a beautiful lady, but let me try. I don't think liberal is another Alipay. It's more than that. It is very clear, as Zhou Xiaochuan said, electronic currency. When we talk about that, it's within the jurisdiction of a country and has to be backed up by a reserve. And, with equity, a basket of currency to back it up, for pricing. So the core concept is currency. That's very important. The second important dimension is cross-border. And the third important concept is that the combination of the policy of the central bank and the payment tool of commercial banks. So it's a very interesting concept, and we should pay enough attention to LIRA, because for the monetary system, for the reserve system, it's going to be impact. But whether it's going to be successful, I'm not sure, because it's leverage issue, it's a reserve issue. This centralized measure system, there's still many issues, and it's in a very preliminary stage. But as money, as a currency, to challenge this globally scattered monetary system, it's something that we pay attention to, because this US dollar international system, it is has many problems ever since 1970s, when the dealing between the gold and US currency happened. US has the deepest financial market. Everybody has to trade with US, and they have to use US dollar. So that is the reason why, ever since, even after the financial crisis, still, US currency remains a very important currency. But there is fundamental default. That is, the monetary policy of the central bank of USA, the Federal Reserve, especially when it's adopted its, quantitative easing policy, which leads to the outflow of other currencies and devaluation of many other currencies. Is that ESDR? It's different from ESDR. That is my view. ESDR is another tool, which is a payment-centric concept for reserve, but it's something, in the future. So it's a kind of payment tool, backed up by monetary assets. Well, I don't think it's different. It's got short-term, long-term, and different impact in different timings. We talk a lot to its team, this liberal team, and about its technology architecture, technology issues. They have to be addressed. But as a science technology company, they talk a lot about good regulation. So, judging from its development, I think they tend to focus a bit more on payment, by Facebook. So I don't think you have such a big divergence. Facebook perhaps is hesitating between, as a money or as a payment system because of the attitude of the central bank. And many people also, paying a lot of attention to this. So it's going to be an interesting process. We have many years to watch. So to Mr. Huang, Yang.
Join the node of the LIRA. Will you do that in the future? And also, 黄行长，未来如果是人民币，假如我们
So Mr. Huang, for the internationalization of RMB, if CCB is going to be one of the node for LIRA, perhaps one day both CITIC and CCB are going to be the nodes for LIRA. Once the announcement in a white book of Facebook came out, the reaction from banks are very low profile, while the response from the regulator are very strong. Sorry, you only have 2 minutes. It's difficult to say, to give you a straight answer. But that's very on topic for the international financial sector.
Rightly or wrongly, I'm running all our client relationships in Asia. That kind of a decision sits with our CEO, and I would not dare to humbly try to do his job for him. So,
what will be your recommendation?
My recommendation is we, as Citi, embrace technology all of the time. I think one thing which is always important when we're embracing technology, as the colleague said, is it's important to do it in a way that the regulators are comfortable and happy.
Yeah.
Because I think global money laundering considerations, know your client considerations, inclusion considerations are very, very important. You don't want to create a situation where a small Chinese company does not have access to the markets for some reason or the other. And so I think all of these developments are very interesting, but you need to see them fleshed out a bit over the next few months.
非常感谢。非常抱歉，我本来特别希望让大家
I'm sorry, I hope that we would have had more time. So we go to the wrap-up segment. So invite each panelist to forecast, for the financial sector in China or the world financial sector. By 2030, what is the most impossible thing that might happen? Zhang Lu. Well, I invest a lot in medical medicine. Aging is another big issue. So by 2030, aging would be even more acute problem. So it's going to big impact for the transformation of the financial sector. And also the fintech is going to be another big driver. For by 2030, what will be CCB like by that time? By 2030, CCB will be a very scientific company with a better market reputation, even closer to our people. We did a lot of things last year.
in the wildest imagination.
Sure. So in the wildest imagination, if you're looking out far into the future, I think you're going to see big social changes where individuals will no longer have capex, they will all have opex. You won't own a car anymore, you will just order it. You won't own your phone anymore, you will, in some sense, rent it. In the same way, the real estate we may use up may become very, very small, and we may have more shared living rooms, more shared all kinds of facilities. If you want one big prediction, today we consume and cook 90% of our food at home. That's estimated to drop down as low as 20%. When I first heard that, I thought that was a crazy prediction, but 18 billion hot meals got delivered in China last year. So what does that, why am I going through that long? Everything as a service. It means the finance sector will completely change the points of financing. The personal balance sheets will be smaller, you will have larger corporate balance sheets. And that is a very, very interesting change that everybody in the banking sector needs to be ready for.
Thank you, 朱行长。
2030年这个我
I think I wouldn't live until that year to see the final conclusion. But if I'm to look at the future, what I want to see is the internationalization of RMB for it to become one of the top 3 major currencies in the world. Thank you. 3 things to say. I agree with Mr. Zhu. I hope that in 2030, in international settlement and savings, RMB can exceed 11% given by SDR. And Dalian Commodity Exchange can become the top-notch commodity exchange in the world, one of the most important pricing and risk management center. And the thing that I don't want to see is that after the appearance of LIRA, and the path would be just like US and gold. US was linked to gold, and then this connected with gold. If LIRA is linked with SDR and then disconnect, and it's a huge impact to the world, to the payment system. So, agree with Mr. Huang with this huge change, and Mr. Zhu, if we're not prepared fully, and then we will be lagged behind. I believe all these bold expectations for 2030 might materialize. Next year, we shall discuss about the situation back then. I would like to thank all the panelists.